Thank you for being with us. COVID-19 has brought a lot of changes. Some of the changes that we're seeing is in the way people have romantic relationships, dating. And to speak with us more about it is Professor Anna Macready, who is a specialist in consumer behaviour. Thank you very much, Professor Macready, for joining our programme today. What are the changes that we're seeing in the way people date, people of all ages date, have romantic relationships? What has COVID brought to us?
Well, that's a really good question, Leah. So I think that the obvious thing is that the way we look for partners, the way we meet partners, and manage relationships has all had to change really drastically. So obviously we're restricted physically in where we can move to. Sorry, there's echo here.
It's all right. It's okay. We can hear you very well. You can carry on.
Okay. So then there are sort of limited opportunities to meet people, and in addition, there's a sort of there's not only the fear of that normally accompanies dating, but in addition to that, there's the fear of catching COVID. So people are able to go online much more now. So there's been a huge upsurge in online dating, and also video meetings and things like that. It's interesting, you were talking about different age groups. And certainly, I mean, if you're younger, you're more used to the technology. Older daters were resistant at first, I think, to actually going online, and also because I'm dating in the pandemic. So I've got there was one dating app that found that 87% of their older daters, senior daters, were going to wait until after the lockdown, after the pandemic, before dating again. And that was in March, and 2 months later, half of those had changed their minds. And I think that's because, you know, we are hardwired to connect, to form attachments, and the sort of loneliness or the stress of loneliness can you know, affect us. It affects us physically with immune function, inflammatory markers, through stress, experience of stress. And so sometimes people are talking about sort of uncertainty of COVID as being equivalent to some kind of chronic trauma, which affects things like, you know, our concentration. It affects our inhibition of impulses. So I think that's one of the main things that's changed. But I suppose if you want to look at, you know, the positives and the negatives, the positives is that we have much longer lead times before we can meet in person. So, you know, and no one has to pay for the dinner that you would normally experience when you first go on your date. You can take time to build up a relationship, so you get more emotional protection.
Yes.
Which I think is good.
I mean, we can go on and on, because I see a lot of problems with that too. Somebody can have multi-partners, even more so, I think.
Well, yes.
Virtual partners, and it can go on and on. So, and also people take on a different persona when they're actually online to what they are in reality. So there are a lot of problems with that. But with regards to consumer behavior and the consumer market, how has this kind of dating affected things like flowers and luxury goods, lingerie, things like that?
Well, I think that when you look at the markets at the moment, I mean, flowers, it's particularly hard for cut flowers. For example, people aren't buying them as much, so there's been a slump in demand. And now, of course, farmers aren't planting the flowers as much. So of course that affects supply, and of course with the difficulties of being able to get the supplies over to the consumers. So flowers, cut flowers, that market's certainly been hit. Lingerie, yes, they are reporting a temporary slump in the lingerie market. So it's they're not expecting it to be long lasting, but they have noticed a sort of hit. Obviously, alcohol, I don't think has really sort of changed in response to COVID from that perspective.
There seems to be an increase in alcohol, well, locally, definitely, in alcohol consumption.
Yes.
What about the psychology of temptation in lockdown?
The psychology of temptation. Well, I think that certainly we've talked about when you're dating as a single person, but then there's also the dating which you might be doing not necessarily as you should be doing. So the temptation to go online and find new partners, additional partners when you're already in a relationship. We have so the temptation for doing that. I suppose the psychology behind it is that we have we're very prone to bias in risk taking. So for instance, we might be more prone to taking risks because we want, if we see someone we want to go out with, then we tend to ignore or underestimate the risks. We're very good at assessing risks for other people, but not so much for ourselves.
And to sort of conclude, because our time is always very short, what other markets, consumer markets, have been affected by this? By dating in a different way and lockdown measures and COVID-19.
Well, I mean, you know, anything, gifts and food and restaurants and you know, the romantic atmospheres. We're having to actually operate in a sort of much more virtual environment. So that cuts out all the other aspects of romance that we associate with dating.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Macready, for joining our program again tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Professor Anna Macready. She's Associate Professor at Reading University right now. And I also would like to thank Professor Colin Lawrence, who was with us earlier on the US elections. Should you have any queries, any comments, please direct them towards Net Television or myself anonymously via my blog, and we'll address them during this program. I wish you a lovely evening.